I was slow by nature, always a beat behind in matters of love. It was Julian who loved me, who took me exactly as I was, who married me against everyone's objections. I thought I was the luckiest woman alive. Until the 5th year of our marriage, when I stumbled onto the secret between Julian and my sister. They'd been carrying on behind my back for a long time. They'd even had the gall to make a baby together. He ruffled my hair, gentle as ever, his voice soft and doting. I've fallen for your sister, the same way I once fell for you. You could be generous about it. Accept her. Accept us. Every drop of blood in me seemed to freeze, and the tears wouldn't stop. I didn't scream. I didn't fall apart. I just shut the door and walked away. But Julian was the one who lost his mind. 6 months later, when I still assumed the two of them were long since married with a baby, he was the one crying, begging me not to leave, like a dog begging for scraps. This month, Julian's business trip dragged on longer than any before it. He used to hate being away. He'd cut every trip short if he could. And every time he came home, he stuck to me like a human magnet, keeping me up the whole night. But starting last month, something in him had changed. Last time he came home, he said he was tired, wanted an early night. He's never been like that before. And this month he keeps putting off coming back. I've actually started to miss him. When I said all this to my sister, Chloe rolled her eyes at me, half laughing. You really have to wonder? Your husband's obviously cheating. She cradled a tall cup of coffee and took a careless sip. I told you from the start, he was only with you for the novelty. You wouldn't listen. What man doesn't want someone younger? I shook my head. Don't say things like that. Julian promised he'd take care of me his whole life. Julian was 5 years younger than me and the only heir to the Sterling Group. When he proposed, his parents fought it with everything they had. He'd already been promised to someone else, an engagement his family had arranged back when he was a boy, to the daughter of an old family friend. To stop him from marrying me, his father resorted to the family's disciplinary punishment. Julian gritted his teeth and bore 99 blows from his father. His back was a mangled mess of flesh and blood, swollen and burning with searing pain. How could a man who'd sacrificed that much for me ever cheat? Chloe sighed and shook her head, lips pressed flat. I've always been emotionally dense, a beat too slow on everything. The textbook bookworm, everyone calls me. My half-sister Chloe, though, has been sharp since we were kids. Over the years, she's worried about me more times than I can count. 3 days later, while I was running an experiment in the university lab, a student called me out of nowhere. Professor Quinn, I'm at a bar downtown, and I just saw your husband get into it with some guy. The other guy's threatening to call the cops. Maybe you should come down. I laughed a little. You've got the wrong person. My husband's still away on business. But after I hung up, my hands went still over the equipment. Without quite knowing why, I got in my car and drove to the bar the student had named. Outside one of the private rooms, I caught a voice I knew. Julian, you went way too far. The guy barely brushed against me. Why'd you hit him that hard? It was Chloe. Something in my chest gave a faint shiver. Had someone bothered her? Was she hurt? Thank God Julian was there, or who knows what could have happened. My work back at the lab wasn't finished. I was about to slip quietly away when my feet stopped on their own. Julian was supposed to be away on business. Why would he be here alone with Chloe? My heart clenched, and before I could think, I'd stepped closer. Through the gap in the half-open door, I saw Julian sprawled lazily in Chloe's lap, one hand already wandering up under the hem of her dress. You're mine. I won't let anyone else touch you. Chloe gave a soft snort, tracing little circles on his cheek. Don't say that. If my sister ever found out, it'd break her heart. And I couldn't bear to see her hurt. I stood frozen, like I'd been struck by lightning. It was the height of summer, and yet I was cold all over, like I'd been dropped into a well of ice. Just then a delivery guy walked up, checking the VIP number on the room over and over before setting a bag down at my feet. It was a delivery from the pharmacy. As if I already knew what was inside, I tore the bag open with shaking hands. A box of condoms stared back at me. Julian had told me about this brand once. He said he loved the fresh strawberry flavor. My mind snapped back to the past. Chloe. Strawberries were always her favorite. My heart sank like a stone. So this had started a long, long time ago. The delivery guy gave me a few pitying glances as he left. I stood there staring dumbly at the box of Durex in my hand, my head swimming. The breathing inside the room had already turned ragged, impatient. Julian was never a patient man. I drew a slow breath, tucked the box back in the bag, and pushed the door open. Your delivery's here. I set the bag on the table by their hands, calm as if nothing in the world had happened. Julian shoved Chloe off him. He scrambled to fix his shirt, and when I caught the red mark on his collar, my stomach turned over. Vivian, what are you doing here? His voice cut out. Vivian, let me explain. Explain what? I didn't get the chance to answer. Chloe spoke first. Why bother explaining, Julian? My sister's slow. She's not blind. Chloe pulled Julian aside. Julian, it's come to this. There's no point hiding it anymore. Then she walked straight up to me. All this time, Julian's been lying to you, telling you he wasn't back yet. He's been here with me the whole time. A few days ago, when you asked about the mark on my neck, and I said it was a mosquito bite, I was lying then too. It's a love bite. Julian gave it to me. Her eyes met mine, taunting. Vivian, I fell for your husband, and I slept with him. So, what are you going to do about it? I looked into her eyes. In 30 plain, quiet years, I'd never been handed a problem this hard. I shook my head numbly. I didn't know. Chloe, stop stirring things up. Julian fumbled to drag her aside. Vivian, don't be upset. We'll talk about all this at home. Don't you still have to get back to the lab? Go on ahead. I'll take Chloe home. She just had a scare. I don't want her on her own. I didn't wait for Julian to finish. I yanked the door open and bolted out like I was fleeing for my life. In the car, watching the scenery slide backward past the window, the blank fog in my head slowly filled with old memories. When Julian and I first got together, he and Chloe couldn't stand each other. They bickered the second they were in the same room, and I was always stuck in the middle, soothing one and then rushing off to calm the other. Then somewhere along the way, the two of them got quiet around each other. When Julian and I went out, he'd often suggest bringing Chloe along. She's home all alone with nothing to do. Let's invite her. We'd eat out, and Julian would order Chloe's favorite dishes. We'd watch a movie, and Chloe would act all coquettish as she squeezed into the seat between us. He'd even swap out her ice water for warm ginger tea in a thermos when she had her period. And I just smiled through all of it, never noticing a thing. I'd actually thought how nice, those two have finally made peace. Now I was waking from the dream. They'd made peace, all right. I was the one left out in the cold. Back at the university, I sat alone by the lake and thought the whole night through. I didn't believe it. I couldn't believe that the little sister who trailed after me my whole life, swearing she'd protect me, would do something to hurt me. She must have some reason she couldn't say out loud. The next day I called Chloe and asked to meet. The same coffee shop. The same cup of coffee. This time Chloe didn't hold anything back. She drained her coffee in long gulps and slid me a sideways look. Vivian, I won't dance around it. Julian started cheating with me ages ago. He says when he was chasing you, he thought you were the best woman in the world. Then he caught you and realized you were nothing special after all. My heart clenched hard. 5 years ago, Julian had chased me so loudly the whole city talked about it. He set off fireworks in the heart of downtown. He confessed to me on the giant screen above the square. He had a whole sky of roses rain down for me. I'd said, Julian, I'm dull. I don't know the first thing about romance, and I'm older than you. You like me now, but it's just the thrill of something new. Once. I never finished. Julian kissed me before I could. Then, in front of every camera and reporter there, he dropped to one knee and asked me to marry him. I was so overcome the tears spilled over, and I threw my arms around him on the spot. 4 or 5 years after the wedding, he was good to me. He never once forgot an anniversary gift, and even living half his life on business trips, he brought home a little surprise every time. I was never good with people. I stayed on at the university after I graduated, and thanks to his care and protection, I poured myself into research and became the youngest associate professor on campus. I thought we were made for each other, two people who brought out each other's best. I thought my marriage was flawless. But now the bare, brutal truth had smashed my beautiful dream to pieces. Across from me, Chloe was waving a little keychain around, gloating. Julian brought this back for me last month. Officer Judy, from Zootopia. He's got the matching one. Nick the Fox. A loud ringing went off in my skull, and my whole mind went blank. He'd brought me a little gift just like that too. Mine was a Flash keychain, the sloth. He'd said I was just like Flash in the movie, slow but sweet. I'd curled up in his arms, smiling, never once realizing the keychains were a couple set. They were the couple. I was the outsider. I gripped the keychains so hard my knuckles went white. Why? It took everything I had just to get the word out. I wanted to know the answer, and I was terrified to hear the truth. Chloe only let out a mocking little laugh. I'm not like you. You're dull. No sense for romance. Me, I like a thrill. And there's no bigger thrill than sleeping with your sister's husband, is there, Vivian? The last sliver of hope shattered. My throat swelled, raw and aching, and I couldn't get a single word out. I always said he was no good. Otherwise, Why would he come running the second I crooked my finger? Or maybe life with you is just so suffocating that he was sick of you long ago. My heart felt like it was being eaten alive, an unbearable, splitting pain. But Chloe just grinned, as if she couldn't see the agony on my face at all. Then, slowly, she pulled out an ultrasound printout and laid it in front of me. Intrauterine pregnancy. 6 weeks. Heartbeat normal. My eyes stayed fixed on that ultrasound for a long time. Chloe had never even dated anyone. How could she be pregnant? Had someone forced himself on her, or was it something I didn't want to imagine? It's Julian's. Chloe's voice was flat. My breath caught. My heart seemed to skip a beat too. What's wrong, Vivian? Aren't you happy? Chloe's voice carried over. She pointed smugly at the gray smudge on the printout. You're going to be an aunt. I drew a deep breath, and everything in front of me went white. I'd never imagined my life could hold a scene like this. The two people I loved most in the world, the two who mattered most, had betrayed me together. In that moment, panic flooded me. I didn't know how to face the sister I'd grown up with, or the man I'd spent 5 years loving, or the great storm of a marriage we'd built. A violent ringing rose in my ears, and a heat spread from my chest out through my whole body. I shot to my feet, grabbed the coffee cup beside me, and in a fit of rage, hurled it content straight at Chloe. Chloe shrieked and stumbled back, landing hard on the floor. She clutched her belly, brows knotted, pain twisting across her face. At the same moment, the coffee shop door banged open, and a familiar figure rushed in. It was Julian. He reached Chloe, shoved me aside as I scrambled to help her up, and slapped me across the face with everything he had. The force of it sent me sprawling. My temple cracked against the corner of the table and swelled red in an instant, and my vision washed white. Chloe, are you okay? Chloe's brows pinched weakly, and her voice broke into tears. Julian, save me. Save our baby. Julian swept her up into his arms at once. From start to finish, he never once really looked at me. I pushed myself up, the pain throbbing through me. Watching the man I loved fuss over another woman like that, my heart felt like it had been seized in a giant fist and squeezed until it ached. Vivian, you knew Chloe was pregnant, so you knocked her down on purpose, didn't you? Julian's tone was hard and cold, as if the woman in front of him wasn't his wife, but his enemy. I'd meant to explain. Now every word jammed in my chest, suffocating. How could you be so vicious? Chloe's fine this time, so we'll let it go. But if anything happens to her, I will never let you off. In 5 years of marriage, Julian had never once scolded me like this. He used to smile and ruffle my hair. You know something? You're the purest, kindest girl I've ever met. Vivian, I'll love you forever. Something warm slid down from the corner of my eye. I wiped it away and lifted my chin, stubborn. Think whatever you want. Then I bolted out of the coffee shop. The sky was black with clouds, and thunder rolled overhead. The rain came down in sheets. I heard Julian's footsteps behind me. I spun around, only to see him carry Chloe into his car. The door shut, and they sped away. It left me standing there, hollowed out, sobbing in the downpour. I ran through the rain toward home, slipped, and went down into the mud. The rain hammered against me. I struggled a few times, then sank back into it, like the last of my strength had drained away. If I could, I thought, just let me die right here. By the small hours of the morning, I'd spiked a fever. Half conscious, I instinctively called Julian. I tried over and over. No answer. Then his phone shut off completely. And just like that, my head cleared. I dragged my limp, useless body to the hospital alone. After they gave me a shot to bring the fever down, I saw Julian and Chloe outside one of the rooms in the ward. Julian was murmuring to Chloe, gently coaxing her to sleep. He patted her back the way you'd soothe a child. When he turned and saw me, he crept out on tiptoe. What are you doing here? He touched my swollen, bruised cheek, and his voice softened. I lost my temper. Don't take it to heart. Then he pulled me into his arms, tender, as if nothing had happened at all. Chloe's fine, and the baby's safe. Don't worry. I shook my head stubbornly and pulled free of him. Julian. My voice was hoarse. Could you just not be with her? She's my own sister. Getting those words out took everything I had, and cost me every scrap of pride. I loved this man. So much. In 5 years of marriage, clumsy as I was, I'd rarely said anything close to a word of love. But today, facing him again, I was ready to set it all down, ready to ask him whether he'd love me the way he used to, whether he'd come back to me. I looked up at him, my eyes brimming. Julian went still for a moment. Then he laughed out loud. How could that be, Vivian? After everything, you still don't get it? I've fallen for Chloe. I mean it, the same way I once meant it with you. I can't live without her. I felt like I'd come down with a terrible fever. The instant Julian said those words, my chest seized, airless. My throat swelled, raw and bitter. Vivian, here's my promise to you. No matter how far things go with Chloe, you'll always be my only wife. That part never changes. All right? There was even a thread of tenderness in his voice. But I felt like I'd just heard the most absurd thing in the world, too stunned to speak. He really did love Chloe. He really couldn't bear to leave her. He wanted both of us, me and Chloe.
God.
How could a man this shameless exist? It took me a long moment to surface. I opened my mouth clumsily. What are you even saying, Julian? Don't you think this is insane? Completely ridiculous? Julian smiled and patted my shoulder, utterly unbothered. Go home and think it over. I'm staying here with Chloe tonight. Then he went back into the room. He sat down at the edge of her bed and took her hand, his eyes full of worry and tenderness. Something struck my heart, once, then again. He used to be exactly like this with me. The second year of our marriage, I got sick. Unconscious, I had him gripping my hand, crying, begging me not to leave him. He set down all his work and watched over me day and night. The day I was discharged, Julian had wasted away to half himself. For the life of me, I couldn't understand how the Julian who'd loved me like that could turn around and love my sister. The next morning, Julian came out of the room carrying Chloe. He saw me sitting on the bench in the hallway and asked, Vivian, did you sit here all night? I couldn't find a trace of concern in his voice. Only the startled fear of a man worried I'd cling and refuse to let go. My throat tightened all at once. Then I pushed down the unease inside me, shook my head, and held out a few documents to him. The hospital needs a family member to sign these. Chloe's admission forms. Seeing how calm I was, Julian assumed I'd come around. He smiled, relieved, freed up one hand, clumsily flipped through the forms, and scrawled his name in crooked strokes. Then he picked Chloe back up and strode off. I followed behind them, my heart as still as dead water. What Julian didn't know was that, along with those hospital forms, he'd just signed a set of divorce papers. I was slow. I was a fool. But I still had my pride. I couldn't accept a Julian who split his heart in two, and I couldn't accept a marriage with that kind of poison in it. I wanted the divorce. I wanted to vanish from his life, completely. After Julian took Chloe home, he didn't show up again. I packed a few things, and before I left for good, I knocked on the door of Chloe's place. I wanted to see how the two of them were together. Was it like the way we used to be? Julian answered the door in matching his and hers loungewear. Chloe was behind him, hanging off him affectionately, draped over him. Vivian, what are you doing here? His face fell, as if my showing up was the most inconvenient thing in the world. I'm staying here for now, so I can look after Chloe. Once the pregnancy's stable, I'll come back and make it up to you. I'd already made up my mind to go, and still, seeing this in front of me, I stood rooted there, gutless, as if the ground had dropped out from under me. I made myself smile. You don't have to make up to me anymore. I'm leaving. Julian blinked, baffled. Leaving? Leaving for where? Then, just as quickly, the impatience set in. Vivian, you're a grown woman. Could you stop acting out over every little thing? Quit it. Be good now. I parted my lips, but before I could get a word out, Chloe called from inside. Julian, you promised we'd make a candlelit dinner together. Hurry up. Julian turned at once and slid an arm around her waist. Then he lifted his hand and shut the door, closing me out. I smiled, and in that instant everything came clear. I turned around too.
Julian.
We won't be meeting again. The legal process was surprisingly quiet. I took the papers Julian had signed, the ones tucked beneath Chloe's medical admission forms, and brought them to a quiet, unassuming law firm downtown.
The
lawyer, a sharp-eyed woman named Evelyn, looked at the signature, then at me. Are you sure about this, Professor Quinn? She asked, her voice carrying a rare touch of sympathy. If we file this, and his legal team realizes he's signed under false pretension, there might be a fight. He won't fight, I said softly, staring at the rain streaking the window pane. He doesn't care enough to notice yet. By the time he does, I'll be gone. She nodded, and within 48 hours, the machinery of my departure was set in motion. I didn't take much. I didn't want the jewelry he bought me, the designer bags he used to apologize for his long absences, or the keys to the penthouse downtown. I packed 3 suitcases of my books, my research journals, my comfortable linen shirts, and my laboratory slides. The apartment we had shared for 5 years was left impeccably clean, smelling faintly of the lavender wax I used to polish the wooden floors. I left the keys on the kitchen counter, right next to the small, cheap flash, the sloth keychain he had given me. My resignation from the university was processed quickly. My mentor, an elderly dean who had always respected my quiet dedication to biochemistry, didn't ask questions when I requested a transfer to a quiet research outpost on the southern coast. Sometimes, Vivian, he said, patting my hand, the soil we are in becomes too toxic for us to bloom. A change of climate is good. I boarded the high-speed train to S-City on a Tuesday morning. As the train slid out of the station, the gray, towering skyscrapers of my home city began to shrink into the distance. My phone, which had been silent for days, suddenly vibrated.
It was a text from Julian.
Chloe's craving those sour plums from the old market downtown. I'll be staying
At her place again tonight. Be good, Vivian.
Don't make a fuss. I didn't reply. I took the SIM card out of my phone, opened the small window of the train compartment, and let the tiny piece of plastic fly out into the rushing wind. For 30 years, I had been slow. I had been a beat behind. But as the train sped toward the sea, I felt a strange, cold clarity settling into my bones. The numbness was fading, replaced by a vast, quiet, empty space. And for the first time in 5 years, I could breathe. Julian did not notice my absence for 3 weeks. In his mind, I was the steady, immovable piece of furniture in his life, always. There, always waiting, too slow to run and too gentle to fight. He was consumed by the intoxicating drama of Chloe's pregnancy, the thrill of being her savior, and the illicit excitement of their hidden world. It was only when his mother called him, demanding to know why the Sterling Group's quarterly family dinner had passed without Vivian, that he finally returned to our apartment. He expected to find me sitting by the window with a book, perhaps looking up, with that quiet, patient smile he had grown so tired of. Instead, the apartment was freezing. When he turned on the lights, the silence hit him like a physical blow.
The air
Was stale. There were no flowers in the vase, no smell of dinner cooking, and no soft footsteps echoing down the hall. Panic, sharp and unfamiliar, flared in his chest. He took out his phone and dialed my number. The number you've dialed is no longer in service. Vivian, he called out, his voice sounding hollow in the empty rooms. He walked into the master bedroom. The closet door was open. Half of it, the side that had held my simple, faded sweaters and cotton dresses, was completely empty. Not a single coat hanger remained. On the vanity table, where I used to keep my simple skin creams, sat a neat, cream-colored envelope. Julian tore it open. Inside was not a tear-stained letter, but a copy of the finalized divorce decree, stamped by the civil court, along with a copy of the signature page he had scribbled on at the hospital. His hands began to shake. No, he muttered, a cold sweat breaking out on the back of his neck.
This is a joke.
She's throwing a tantrum. She doesn't have the courage to leave me. He drove to my university, his luxury car screeching into the faculty parking
lot.
He stormed into my old department, demanding to see Professor Quinn. The department secretary, a young woman who had always disliked Julian's arrogant demeanor, looked up from her computer with a cool expression. Professor Quinn resigned 3 weeks ago, Mr. Sterling. Her contract was terminated by mutual agreement. Where did she go? Julian demanded, slamming his hand on the desk, his carefully manicured facade cracking. She's my wife. You have to tell me where
She went.
Actually, the secretary said, sliding a copy of a public notice across the desk. According to our records, she is your ex-wife, and we're not authorized to give out the personal relocation details of our former faculty. Please leave, or I will call campus security. Julian stood in the corridor, the silence of the academic halls ringing in his
Ears.
For the first time in his life, he realized that the quiet woman who had loved him unconditionally had slipped through his fingers like water. And he had no idea how to find her. With Vivian gone, the delicate, romantic fantasy Julian and Chloe had built began to rot from the inside out. Without the thrill of secrecy, their affair lost its luster. Chloe moved into Julian's luxury penthouse, but she quickly realized that being the official woman came with a different set of expectations. Julian's parents, who had grudgingly tolerated Vivian because of her quiet dignity and academic background, were absolutely furious. The Sterling Group was a highly respected family dynasty, and the scandal of Julian divorcing his wife for her pregnant half-sister was a public relations nightmare. You fool, his father roared during a private confrontation in the Sterling boardroom. Vivian never asked for a single share of this company. She lived. Quietly, she kept your reputation immaculate, and she endured your absences. Without a word. And you throw her away for this. I love Chloe, Julian argued, though his voice lacked the conviction it once
Had.
She's carrying my child. Then you can live on whatever salary she brings in, his father sneered. Until you resolve this disaster, your trust fund is frozen, and your position as executive vice president is suspended. The financial pressure began to squeeze the romance out of the penthouse. Chloe, who had envisioned a life of endless shopping sprees and high society galas as the future matriarch of the Sterling family, found herself trapped in a beautiful cage with a stressed, irritable man. Why can't we go to the jewelry exhibition tonight, Julian? She complained one evening, throwing her designer purse onto the kitchen island. Your mother's friends are all going. It's embarrassing that I have to stay home. Because we don't have the money for it right now, Chloe. Julian snapped, rubbing his temples. He was exhausted. The pressure at work was mounting and, without Vivian's quiet, organizing presence at home, his life was in chaos.
He
couldn't find his files. His dry cleaning was never picked up. The house was always messy. You never used to talk to me like this, Chloe whispered, her eyes filling with
tears.
You used to say I was your muse. You said Vivian was suffocating. Julian looked at her perfectly styled hair, her heavy makeup, her sharp, demanding eyes, and felt a sudden, suffocating wave of regret. Vivian had never raised her voice. She had never demanded jewelry. When he came home exhausted from a business trip, she would simply brew a cup of herbal tea, sit beside him, and let him rest his head on her lap in absolute, healing silence. I've fallen for your sister, the same way I once fell for you. The words he had spoken so confidently to Vivian now tasted like poison in his mouth. He hadn't fallen in love with Chloe. He had simply fallen for the novelty of someone who flattered his ego. And in doing so, he had destroyed the only real thing he had ever owned. In S City, the air smelled of salt and wild jasmine. I lived in a small, white-walled cottage overlooking the harbor. My new laboratory at the Marine Research Institute was quiet, filled with the steady hum of water filtration systems and the gentle clinking of glass test tubes. Here, my slowness was not a flaw. In marine biochemistry, patience was a virtue. I spent my days watching the slow growth of deep-sea algae, recording data with a steady, unhurried hand. The weight that had pressed down on my chest for 5 years had slowly lifted. I no longer woke up in the middle of the night to check my phone. I no longer wondered if the scent of strawberry on Julian's collar was a trick of my imagination. I had gained a little weight, the color had returned to my cheeks, and my hair, which I now wore in a loose, comfortable braid, caught the golden coastal sunlight. One evening, my colleague, Dr. Marcus Vance, walked into my lab with 2 cups of hot coffee. He was a quiet, practical man with kind eyes and a deep respect for my research. You're staying late again, Vivian, he said, setting a cup near my microscope. The culture needs to be monitored every 3 hours, I replied, looking up with a soft smile. I don't mind. Marcus watched me for a moment, a gentle expression on his face. There's a major biochemistry symposium in the city next month. The institute wants us to present our findings on the algal enzymes. I was hoping you would present it with me. I hesitated. Going back to that city meant facing the ghosts of my past.
But as
I looked at the steady green cultures under the lens, I realized those ghosts no longer had power over me. I'd like that, Marcus, I said quietly. The Grand Plaza Hotel was bustling with academics, industry leaders, and reporters when the symposium began. I stood at the podium in a simple, elegant dark blue suit, my hair pinned up neatly. When I spoke, my voice was calm, clear, and measured. I didn't rush. I presented the data we had spent 6 months gathering, and when the applause filled the hall, I felt a deep, genuine sense of accomplishment. As Marcus and I stepped down from the stage, a commotion near the entrance caught my attention. A man was trying to push past the security guards. He looked disheveled, his expensive gray suit rumpled, his tie loose, and his hair wild. His face was pale, his eyes bloodshot and desperate. It was Julian. Vivian. He cried out, his voice cracking, drawing the attention of the entire hall. Vivian, please. Just let me speak to you. The security guards held him back, but I raised my hand slightly. It's all right, I told them, my voice steady. Let him go. Marcus looked at me with concern. Vivian, do you want me to stay? No. Thank you, Marcus. I'll be fine. It will only take a moment. Julian stumbled forward, his knees almost buckling. When he reached me, he didn't look like the proud, arrogant heir of the Sterling Group.
He looked like
A man who had been wandering in a desert for months. Vivian, he whispered, his hands trembling as he reached out toward me though. He didn't dare to touch me. You're so beautiful. You look so different. I am the same, Julian, I said, my voice as calm as a still lake. I have just gone back to being myself. I'm sorry, he gasped, the tears finally spilling over his eyelids. I'm so sorry, Vivian. I was a fool. I was blind. Chloe, it was all a lie.
she.
Manipulated everything. She told the student to call you to the bar. She wanted to force us apart because she wanted the Sterling money. The baby she miscarried 3 months ago, and she didn't even care. She just wanted to use it to tie me down. I listened to him, but my heart didn't clench. There was no anger, no satisfaction, and no pain. I threw her out, Vivian. Julian pleaded, grabbing my hand, his grip desperate, cold, and sweaty.
She's gone.
My parents, they don't care about her. I don't care about her. I want you. I want to go home. Please, Vivian, come back to the
City with me.
We can start over. I'll do anything. I'll give you everything. He fell to his knees right there on the polished marble floor of the convention center, in front of dozens of distinguished guests. He clutched the hem of my trousers, weeping like a child, begging like a dog for scraps. Please, Vivian, don't leave me. I'm dying without you. I can't sleep. I can't
Work.
Every time I close my eyes, I see you walking out of that door. I look down at him. Once, this man's touch had been my entire world. Once, a single frown from him could make me lose sleep for days. But as I looked at him now, kneeling at my feet, I felt nothing but a mild,
Distant pity.
I gently but firmly pried his fingers away from my clothes. Julian, I said softly, do you remember what you told me at the hospital? He froze, looking up at me with wide, terrified eyes. You told me that you loved Chloe the same way you once loved me. I continued, my voice carrying no malice, only the absolute, undeniable truth. And you were
Right.
Your love is like a seasonal flower. It blooms brightly, it withers quickly, and then you look for the next patch of ground. But I am not a flower.
Julian.
I am the soil, and I have decided to grow something else. Vivian, please. I signed the papers, Julian. We are divorced. There is nothing left to say. I turned my back on him. Vivian, he screamed, his voice echoing off the high ceilings of the hall. A desperate, broken sound. Vivian, don't walk away. Please. But I didn't stop. I walked through the doors of the convention center, out into the cool, refreshing autumn air of S City. Marcus was waiting for me near the steps, holding 2 coats. He didn't ask what had happened. He simply smiled and handed me my coat. Ready to go back to the lab? He asked. Yes, I said, wrapping the coat around myself, feeling the steady, warm beat of my own heart. Let's go home. Behind me, the doors closed, shutting out the desperate cries of a man who had realized too late that the slowest heart, once gone, can never be caught again.